Hey everybody, Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of Jazz Piano Fundamentals and Playing Solo Jazz Piano. I think I wrote War and Peace and Anna Kareninoff. Is that the right title? Anna Kareninoff. Doesn't sound. Anna Kareninoff. I think that's it. Wow, I'm embarrassed. I have a master's in literature. Solo standards for piano. Hop over to jeremysiskind.com. That's where the good stuff is. Dostoevsky ain't got nothing on me. Neither does Tolstoy. None of those are Russians. Okay, so today's video is just simply called All the Comping Patterns I Have Names For. There's actually not that many. There's not really that many comping patterns out there, but I'm going to show you all the ones that I personally have names for, and I'll tell you about a couple others that other folks have names for. All right, so if you've read my book, Jazz Piano Fundamentals, Book 1, you are really so familiar with the Charleston. This is a great place to start for comping. This comping pattern has beats 1 and the end of 2. I just want to mention something about notation. People often ask, well, there's one quarter note and one eighth note, so the quarter note should be played longer, right? But that's not what we're doing here notationally, right? Notationally, when we have notes on the beat, we generally notate them as quarter notes so we can see the beat clearly. Whereas when we have just one note off the beat, we notate it as an eighth note because now we can see that beat clearly. And then we show things like length could be, I could put staccato over both of these notes. So it's not that beat 1 is supposed to be longer than the end of 2. It's just a notational thing to make everything clear. So I'm going to play the bass in my left hand, and I'll play that Charleston pattern in the right. Sounds like this. Okay. Why is it called the Charleston? Well, it's named after a James P. Johnson piece that launched a dance craze, and this piece, in the first two measures of many of its phrases, includes this rhythm. In the piece, we're holding the second of the two comps. With this, as we comp, I would encourage my students to only hold intentionally. Usually, I would encourage you to just play these both short. Listen for the articulation. And then just to say, because I always get questions, people are always wondering, I'm just notating the rhythms here. I'm turning these into chords, but this is just an indication of the rhythm that you're going to play. So I'm not saying that there's two notes and this little clef here is showing that it's more of a drum kind of a rhythmic thing rather than actual notes. All right, so that's the Charleston. And as we're going to see, a lot of other comping patterns are based on the Charleston, or at least that's one way to look at it. So next, we have the Reverse Charleston, and I included this one that I'm calling the Sidewinder. It's not necessarily that common, but it's good to know. And these are both related to the Charleston in that they're taking the same pattern of the Charleston, but they're sliding it back in the measure by some different amounts. So instead of beat 1 and the end of 2, which forms the Charleston, to form the Reverse Charleston, we're sliding each comp back by an eighth note to the end of 1 and beat 3. It's a little bit more relaxed, laid back sounding. It sounds like this. Now, the Sidewinder is named after the famous Lee Morgan tune, which is not quite in a swing style exactly. It's kind of like a funky boogaloo groove kind of thing. And this is, I think, the only comping pattern you're going to see here that has a comp on beat 2. And the Sidewinder, I should mention, is just sliding that Charleston back even one more eighth note. So now, instead of beat 1 and the end of 2, we went back for the Reverse Charleston to the end of 1 and beat 3. And now even one more to beat 2 and the end of 3. So like I said, I don't know that I would play this so much in a swing context, but it's kind of a funky New Orleans-y fun beat. Well, let me play it in a swing context so you can compare it with the other ones. you might be wondering, Jeremy, you can call me Jeremy, why is this the only one with the comp on beat 2? And I have a theory about this, which is that my theory is that comping is mostly defining the strong beats, beats 1 and 3 of each measure. And what we do with our comping is that generally we either anticipate those on the and of 4 and the and of 2, right? Those are the beats right before 1 and 3. We play right on the beat, or we delay those to the and of 1 and the and of 3. So looking at these comping patterns in those terms, we could argue, so we're right on beat 1 on the Charleston, and then this is an anticipation of beat 3. For the reverse Charleston, this is a delay of beat 1, and then we're landing right on beat 3. This is my theory. I don't know if anybody else thinks it makes sense, but I do find that we rarely comp on beats 2 and 4. The hi-hat is already playing beats 2 and 4, but I think we're trying to mostly define the beat. So the Sidewinder is a little bit of an oddball, and like I said, it's not really a swing comping pattern. All right, now here's 2 other comping patterns that I think are based in that Charleston rhythm. So this first one I call beat 3 Charleston. And by the way, we're getting into 2-measure comping patterns now, which you're going to find in Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2 rather than Book 1. So the beat 3 Charleston, you can guess what it is. It's the Charleston starting on beat 3. But a couple things to notice here. First of all, this is a 2-measure comping pattern. And so it's more spacious than the Charleston because we only have 2 comps in 2 measures. Then the second thing to notice is that this pattern generally has a hold built in. So it sounds like this. So I'm playing short, long. And this comping pattern is especially great for call and response type of tunes. So many people use this comping pattern on Autumn Leaves, for instance. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and, right? Or in a mellow tone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Okay. Now, this comping pattern on the right, I consider a variation of that beat 3 Charleston, where we're taking that beat 3 Charleston, but we're adding the and of 1 to it. And I saw a post by Ethan Iverson, the great pianist and educator and blogger, who calls this the Cedar Walton pattern. And to me, this is very similar to what we're doing with the beat 3 Charleston, but it's just got a little bit of an extra thing in it. So, and so what I'll often do is I'll mix between the beat 3 Charleston and let's go ahead and call this the Cedar Walton pattern. And sometimes I'll play just the beat 3 Charleston and then listen. So those two go together really well because they're almost the same. The Cedar Walton pattern just has one more comp in there. Okay, now we're going to 2 patterns named after other great jazz pianists. The Red Garland pattern, I think, is relatively famous, relatively well known. And, you know, this is one of the times when the pianists actually use this pattern over and over. You can listen, for instance, to Red Garland's solo on Bye Bye Blackbird, and he's just chilling with the comping on the and of 2 and the and of 4 the entire way through. It is crucial to think of this pattern as anticipations of beats 1 and 3 rather than delay of beat 2 and 4 or something like that, because we always want to play the upcoming chord, right? So if I'm playing a whole tune with the Red Garland pattern, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is, in some ways easy because it's totally consistent. You're comping every 2 beats. But in another way, it's very hard because we're always comping on the off beats. There's not a single on beat comp in this pattern, and that makes it different than all that came before. And that's one reason why I save it for Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2 instead of introducing it in Book 1, even though I think it's a really important comping pattern. And then this is also from that same Ethan Iverson post. He calls this one the McCoy Tyner pattern. And I know why. Because McCoy likes to play a low fifth on the beat. And then anticipations. So it's very similar to the Red Garland pattern in that there's a lot of anticipations. But here in this, supposed McCoy Tyner pattern, there is a downbeat. And it's making the phrasing more clear, right? The phrasing is in groups of 2 measures because we're returning to that downbeat every 2 measures. And then this feels a little bit out of order, but so it goes. I'm not sure that there needed to be an order here. This is the Count Basie pattern. I've had a little trouble with my technology getting it in frame. There we go. That's pretty good. And you can see how this matches my thesis here, that comps usually come either on beats 1 and 3 or 1/8 note off. Right here, this pattern is a little bit remarkable because we have 2 comps right on the strong beat, and then 1 anticipation. And I like to joke with my students that for these on beats, to get them right, you got to crunch your abs every time you play these on beats. And this is actually a good tip for jazz groove is downbeats mean ab crunch. So 1, 2, up. This is a great comping pattern when you have 2 measures to fill. It fills the space. So oftentimes, at the end of an 8-measure section, there might be 2 whole measures to fill, or maybe a soloist is playing in a really call and response kind of fashion, and so maybe you're playing. So that's it, you guys. That's all the comping patterns that I have names for. I'll show you the whole sheet in case you want to screenshot it or compare one to another. You're very welcome to do that. What's mine is yours, especially these lovely jazz books. They're yours if you buy them. If you're interested in these kind of comping patterns, Jazz Piano Fundamentals Books 1 and 2 are going to really be the place to find them. Okay, comping can be short for complimenting. So if you've watched this far, compliment me on something. Maybe my beautiful brown shirt. Some people say it's not a good color for a shirt, but here we are. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Take good care.